Hey guys, DMS here. Today I have for you a review of the Beyerdynamic DT880 600 ohm edition. Now, I covered these a while back at one point, but it's been a while, some things changed. I really feel like I didn't do it justice before, so let's go on and get back into this headphone and cover all the areas that I missed back then. As always, I've got my notes right here, so let's jump right in with build and comfort. So first thing that I have to have a little bit of a gripe with is the pads. I love Beyerdynamic's velour pads. They're very, very soft, but they always have these fatal flaws. I think they could always be just a little bit deeper, and I wish they had just a little bit more vertical height. Now, they're not bad pads. They sound very good, and they are reasonably comfortable, but they just need to be a hair bigger for me personally. Now, most people aren't going to have problems with this, but it's just one of those little things. Now, this is a reasonably affordable headphone, and with that, there's going to be some things that aren't perfect. For example, also, the padding on top could be a little bit thicker. It's acceptable, but it could be a little bit thicker. I noticed some people take these pilot pads that ZMF makes and put those on top of their headbands, and that could probably help with that problem. Now, I don't really have an issue with that until I've been wearing these for a good number of hours, so in all honesty, if you use these like a normal person and not like a crazy person like me who sits at a computer for 12 hours editing, you're probably going to have no issues with them. Another downside is that the cable, non-detachable. This is a very long cable, and it is attached permanently to these headphones. You can modify them to make the cable detachable, but that is definitely going to affect your warranty, so do that at your own risk. The end terminates to 1/4 inch and 3.5 millimeter. It's 3.5 millimeter with a screw-on 1/4 inch adapter. Now, aside from that, they are very, very sturdy headphones. I feel like I could drop kick these and they'd probably be fine, but those couple things could definitely be improved on just a little bit. So overall, build and comfort, I'm going to give fair. Absolutely fair. Not perfect, not bad in any way, but fair. And let's move into sound and frequency response, starting with sub bass. So these are a dynamic headphone, very high impedance dynamic headphone, and as a result of that, the sub bass, like many dynamics, does start to roll off just a little bit, but by my measurements and listening, not very much. So the sub bass is very clean, and it's very reasonably well extended for a dynamic, but it is not forward by any means. It's not loud thumping bass, but it is very clean, and you can certainly hear it. It's definitely audible. Now moving up there from the sub bass into the bass and mid bass, it is extremely clean like the sub bass. There's no bloom into the mid range at all, and everything in this region is very well separated. This is something that's very difficult for headphones to pull off, is having clean and separated low frequencies, and I'm very impressed by Beyerdynamic's ability to do that in the 600 ohm version of the DT880. Moving up from there, the mid range is not anywhere near lush like the 600 and 650s are, but it is a still very rich and satisfying mid-range. It's not quite as forward either, but it's certainly not lacking, and I'm more than satisfied with the mid-range performance of this headphone. And with mid-range, vocal presence, vocal clarity, and vocal separation are very strong and extremely competitive, both within the price range of this headphone and into headphones that are significantly more expensive. Ones that come to mind is this very much reminds me of the mid-range performance and vocal clarity of the DT1990, though not quite as clear in the treble and bass regions as the 1990 is. It certainly competes as far as vocal presence goes with things like LCD2C and other pretty expensive headphones in comparison to this one. I know not expensive when it comes to flagships, but this isn't a flagship. This is a $218 headphone. So the fact that it can even be compared in some aspects to a close to $1,000 planar is certainly impressive. Now, the low treble is a bit recessed in comparison to the bass, lower mid-range, and treble. This is interesting because this is very similar to what the HD800 does, but on the HD800 I noticed the low treble and the mid-range, upper mid-range always seem to have a bit of a hollow sound, whereas the DT880 does not seem to sound hollow at all. It still seems to sound reasonably neutral, regardless of the fact that there is a clear recess in this range. Now right after that, we do have what I guess could be called a peak. It is level with the bass region, but since the mid-range and lower treble does drop down, it is a peak in comparison to those frequencies. It definitely can be sibilant at some times, and it definitely does sound bright, but it is extremely detailed, and to me personally tends to reveal flaws in bad mixes. Now, I don't think this is nearly as sibilant as other headphones with significantly lower treble. I think that for the peaks that this has in its treble, the sibilance is extremely reasonable, and I don't find it to be a deal breaker at all, simply because this is an extremely resolving headphone in the highs. And the only time I actually get sibilance, I don't think it is the fault of the headphone, I think it is the fault of the mix that I'm listening to. Being a 600 ohm dynamic, this is a very, very resolving and very, very, very dynamic headphone. Or I'm going to try and make some consistent, replicatable tests for dynamic range soon. I've tried a few here and there, but I'm not happy with the results, but I really do want to get some sort of testing set up at home where I can measure dynamic range easier, because I feel like this would be a very good benchmark for that, because this is in a perfect range to where you're going to hear if a mix is more compressed or if your source equipment is compressed, but it's not too expansive that you're going to only be able to enjoy master quality lossless music, but still enough to tell the difference. And that puts this headphone in a very enjoyable range. I think across the board it is a very enjoyable headphone for what it presents. Now, soundstage and imaging. Imaging is 100% spot on. I'm very pleased with imaging. Soundstage, it doesn't have much of a wow factor, but it's very fair and it's very realistic soundstage. There are songs where instruments will certainly go far out enough to sound like it is out in the room around me, but a lot of times it has more of a wall of sound kind of approach to everything, but not quite in the sense of like the planar wall sound. It's more like a very well separated and detailed wall of sound, with occasional instruments that will separate farther out into your soundstage. And because of that, this is not an HD800. An HD800 has very, very large, expansive, vast soundstage. The HD800 soundstage is extreme in some cases, to the point where I would even call it exaggerated at times. And while this headphone does measure very similarly to an HD800 in some cases, it is not an HD800, because I can actually enjoy listening to it for more than a few minutes without feeling like the treble is going to kill me. The HD800 is not a bad headphone, but it doesn't have a place in my collection, while the DT880 600 ohm definitely does. This is a headphone that I will be keeping, I've had for a while, and I'm going to continue to use it as a reference point. So overall conclusion, this is a headphone that doesn't have a big wow factor, but definitely checks all the boxes very professionally and is a very, very enjoyable headphone to a trained and experienced ear. So if you are a person who has listened to a lot of headphones and you want something that is just all across the board very solid contender without spending a lot of money, the DT880 600 ohm is definitely one of my top picks for its price. Or if you're newer to audio and you just want to pick something up that's very well balanced and sounds great, this is another great choice. I will have a link to this headphone in the video description where you can check it out on Amazon. And as always, guys, if you like this video, please leave a like down below and a comment. Let me know what you want to see in the future. If you want early access to reviews like this one, you can check out the Patreon link in the video description. And don't forget to stick around and subscribe for more videos like this in the future. Until the next one, guys. Peace.